Every new incoming president gets to choose who will make up their cabinet, who will head up the 15 executive departments like Treasury and Defense, plus those 7 positions with cabinet rank like White House Chief of Staff or UN Ambassador. And new presidents, of course, generally fill all those slots. That's the executive branch. The tradition is different when it comes to filling the judicial branch, where the president only fills vacancies that were left over from the previous administration. Through most U.S. history, those vacancies were caused by a pretty usual process: the naming of new people, unexpected deaths, the hearing process. Even when President George W. Bush left office, 54 judicial vacancies were left to his successor, President Obama, to fill. But thanks to Senate Republicans, Trump will enter office with over 100 judicial vacancies to fill. That is double, of course, Bush's amount, plus the biggest vacancy of them all, the Supreme Court seat left by late Justice Antonin Scalia, now one of the longest-running vacancies in American history. And if this were a history lesson, of course, it's not a history of the executive or judicial branch, although it involves them. The president has submitted his nominations for the Supreme Court and other judicial vacancies. What has changed here is obviously the Republican Senate under Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has frozen judicial nominees and famously refused, for the first time in history, to even hold a hearing to consider, or look like the Senate was considering, Barack Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland. Now, Republicans are ready to reap the rewards of that unusual, or at least unprecedented, strategy. Depending on how you see it, this was either an unprincipled, unprecedented power grab of the worst kind, or maybe it was just the shrewd politics that has come to define the last few years, a necessary tactical move. Well, in that new interview with his former advisor, David Axelrod, President Obama said that as a matter of politics, McConnell's tactics worked.
Mitch McConnell's insight, which I've said just from a pure tactical perspective, was pretty smart and well executed. The degree of discipline that he was able to impose on his caucus was impressive. His insight was that we just have to say no to that.
We just have to say no, and that was smart and well executed, as one way to put it. And President Obama might be looking for ways to avoid any notes of sour grapes as he turns over his desk to Donald Trump. But other Democrats and liberals see this obstruction very differently, and they are right now arguing that Republicans should actually be forced to pay a price for it. Otherwise, liberals warn that rewarding the tactic will only further normalize it. In an unusually scathing Christmas Day editorial, for example, the New York Times said basically the Republican Supreme Court maneuver was a robbery, a crime that can only be put right by the nomination of a centrist to the bench. Former Judiciary Chairman Pat Leahy, who's been through his share of fights on this, called the Garland blockade, quote, the most outrageous act of obstruction and irresponsibility he's seen in, count 'em up, 42 years in the Senate. Other Democrats want some kind of leveling up here, advocating that Trump's picks be given the full, quote, Garland treatment. And Senator Dianne Feinstein in particular says, quote, what goes around comes around. But does it? Republicans are readying to stack the courts with conservative Heritage Foundation approved picks, not the kind of consensus candidates they demanded of President Obama. And it is a real question whether Democrats in Washington, as well as whomever takes over the DNC, exact a price for all that obstruction or simply turn the other cheek to invite another beating. Joining us now is Jaime Harrison, chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and more importantly, the reason he's with us tonight, he is currently running to be the chair of the DNC. Thanks for joining tonight. What is your view of how to handle that strategic question I just discussed?
Well, first of all, happy holidays, Ari. It's good seeing you again. Listen, I believe in this philosophy. You go to a lot of 5 and 10 stores that are still left in South Carolina, and you usually see signs that say, touch it, break it, own it. Well, the Republicans have touched this government. They broke it under President Obama, and now they own it. And now, you know, retribution is at play. We cannot allow Donald Trump and the Republicans to ramrod into this government. These folks who want to bring us back to a bygone era as it relates to so many of the rights that we all enjoy. We see what's going on in North Carolina right now in terms of rolling back on rights. And I expect similar things to happen in our federal government.
So what should your party do with regard to Trump's Supreme Court nominee?
It's time to roll up the sleeves and fight back. There were so many of us that when the Republicans took control in both the House and the Senate, who just were begging the Senate Democrats to filibuster. And I'm not just talking about the filibuster where they'll pull a bill from the floor and continue on with legislation. We're talking about bringing out the cots, making sure that people are there late at night, and stopping everything in its tracks. That's what people are looking for right now. We have to remember, there were more than 3 million more people who voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. And so, in essence, the majority of the American people want what Hillary Clinton was fighting for in terms of policies and rights.
Right. You talk about
can't afford.
You talk about the 3 million.
Ahead,
I mean,
Ari.
that goes to political strategy with folks saying, gosh, Hillary Clinton had the mandate, had the edge, and there was some kind of execution problem in getting some of the people out in the most important states and spending the money in the right way. Take a listen to President Obama on the ground game also in that David Axelrod interview.
Part of what we have to do to rebuild is to be there. And that means organizing, that means caring about state parties, it means caring about local races, state boards, or school boards and city councils and state legislative races, and not thinking that somehow just a great set of progressive policies that we present to the New York Times editorial board will win the day.
Now, candidly, Jaime, you're not the candidate in the DNC race who is closest to President Obama. Are you running more as the state party or grassroots candidate then?
I am. I'm running for a 57, I know we got 50 states, but we got 6 territories and our Democrats abroad. I am running for all of them. Our problem, Ari, was, we sort of got drunk off of the fact that we were able to elect President Obama in 2008 and 2012, and we forgot how we actually were able to do that, how we took back control of Congress in 2006. And that was with Howard Dean's 50-state strategy. We'd stopped investing in state parties, and as a result, the party infrastructure was broken. And that's how Republicans now control 33 of 50 governorships. That's why they control 69 of 99 state houses. And we've lost over 1,000 or almost 1,000 Democrats in state legislatures over the past 8 years. We have to go back to that strategy and rebuild state parties. It is essential to our success. We can't be the Democratic National Presidential Committee. The DNC is about more than just the presidency. It's about all of those down ballot folks who have arguably even more of an impact on the day-to-day lives of people than the person that sits in 1600 Pennsylvania.
Jaime Harrison, chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and as we mentioned, a candidate for the DNC leadership post. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Ari. Take care.
Great to see you. Happy holidays. Now, still ahead, remembering Carrie Fisher in her own words.